Okay, welcome to part 3 of our Illustrator tutorial. This is where we are going to go over the basic workspace, some of the basic drawing tools. Okay, we have already imported some, some paths from Photoshop. We've also imported some paths from Rhino. Those are on two separate videos. But this video is, let's start looking at the workspace. First of all, there's the artboard. We have two artboards right now. So we're going to use the artboard tool and we're going to clean that up. So here it is, artboard tool, Shift 0. And you can see that it's going to go ahead and highlight the two different artboards. We don't want this one, so I'm going to go ahead and trash it. And this one here is maybe a little tight on these figures, so I'm going to give it a little bit of extra space. You can see that the current width of that artboard is 18, almost 19 inches by a little over 9 inches high. So we're going to change that. I'm going to just round that up to 20 inches wide and 10 inches tall. And you can see the artboard changing. Now you can move that artboard around. Oops. You can move it independently from the artwork. Right now it is artwork with artboard, so you can unlink those two, and you can move the artboard independently from the objects. Yeah, like I said, you can change portrait versus landscape format. You can add new artboards. Did you note that when I clicked on the artboard tool, this is the dynamic toolbar up here. So any tool that I click here, a subset of options for that tool will pop out up here. So that's a good thing to note. We've already cleaned up these silhouettes, so I want to talk a little bit about stroke and fill and how you can control that. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Zoom in. I'm just doing Command Spacebar, and then you can drag right or left to zoom in or out. All right. So right now we have our stroke, which is here, and that's set to 1 point. I can lighten that up, or I can make that stroke thinner or thicker. But I can also change the fill. Right now this fill is set to nothing. What I'm going to do is go ahead and set my fill to a color. I think I'm going to go with yellow, or maybe we'll do 100% cyan and 100% yellow. So you can kind of get a rough color here, and then you can fine tune it with these sliders. So I'm going to go with this green, and then I'm going to get rid of my stroke. So you can use the X key to toggle between the fill and the stroke, and then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my stroke there. So now you can see what that looks like. I have my lines and my figures on two separate layers. Notice right now the lines are lying over the figures as they are in the image here. So let's go ahead and flip that around. I want my lines behind my figures, so we can do something like that. And then let's also go ahead and make all of our figures have the same attributes. Pan over here so I can get all of them. And let's use the eyedropper to do that. That's a quick key of eye, and it's really nice. You can select the attributes from an object, so I can select the background, I can select that line, or I can select this path. This path is filled with that green color and has no stroke. So now I can apply those attributes to other objects by holding down the Option key and then go ahead and select those. So now all four of my figures are the same, have the same attributes. Okay, great. Now what I would like to do is just go over some basic ways to edit paths in Illustrator. That's one of the things that Illustrator does best. So let's go ahead and zoom in, And I don't really like the looks of these little indents. I think that was a product of the um, of the magic wand in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is, just like in InDesign, there is a select arrow, but there's also a direct select arrow or tool. So we're going to use the direct select tool to select that path. And what that does is that shows us all of the associated anchors, but it also shows us all of the handles as well. The handles is what gives you curvature of the lines between the anchors. And let's go ahead and, for our pen tool, let's go ahead and hold down on that and then pop that palette out so we can have all of our sub-tools. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete some of these anchors because I don't think they are necessary, and that's just a really, you can't delete handles, you can only delete anchors. So let's make sure that we're deleting the right thing here. And it's getting a little bit nitpicky, but you can zoom right in and see what's going on. And let's go ahead and we'll adjust those handles so that you can do that with the anchor point tool. So I'm just going to kind of smooth this out. You can see how the line moves with it. And there we go. That's kind of a process of editing these curves. See, here's a really big one. So I think what I can do is go ahead and, again, direct select, and then I can select multiple anchors with using the shift tool, and I believe that I can just delete them. And that's another good way to do it too, if I don't want to use the delete anchor tool. So I'm just going to grab a bunch of these and delete. And then also potentially you can just drag and delete multiples at a time, and sometimes that's kind of the fastest way to go. So those are some of your anchor, and those are some of your path editing tools. Go ahead and close those up. Another tool that I wanted to show you how to use is the, where did it go? It's under the eraser. So if you open this palette, this little sub-palette up, we have the knife tool. The knife tool is really handy. You can cut shapes up. For example, I can go ahead and separate the leg from the body here of that figure. I could also, it's a good way to clean up little issues. I could, if I wanted to, I could come in here and use the knife tool to cut that little piece off, delete that. So the one thing to note is that the knife tool will keep this path closed, whereas the scissors will open that path up. So I find it to be a little more tidy if you can keep that path closed. You'll have less unexpected results. Okay, so there's the knife tool. Let's move back for a minute, and let's go ahead and go to View, Rulers, Show Rulers. Since you want these drawings to scale, it's nice to have the rulers visible, and you can right-click on the ruler and make sure we're set to inches. And by default, you'll notice that the 0, 0 point is at that upper left. Of course, you can change that by dragging from the corner, and you can make a new origin point in your drawing. I'm just going to leave it at the top left for now. Another thing is handy is the measure tool. So it's underneath the eyedropper, so you can measure from one line, for example, to the next, and you can see that indeed it is 1 inch. Remember, those lines are 1 inch equal to a foot, or equal to a foot. So that means that this figure is a little tall. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and scale the entire figure. So I'm going to go ahead and select the figures and scale them all at once. Let's say that this is the ground down here on that bottom line. So I'm going to drag from the path and move that set of figures all at once. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab one of the corner points here, hold down Shift, and scale all 4 of these at once. And I'm going to go to about there. So that means we got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and some change feet. And that seems about right to me. This is the ground line. I think I'm going to darken that up. That is right now set to 1 point. There's a bunch of presets. Maybe I'll make it nice and thick, set it at 4 point. I can delete this line, the delete key. At the same time, I'm going to delete these 2 upper lines. I don't need them either. And if you have straight lines like this, you can go ahead and use their bounding box to kind of move them inward. And then I think I'm going to lighten those lines up a little bit. So let's go to maybe 0.5. That looks better. Okay, so now I'd like to select these objects, and I think I'm going to go, well, before I do that, let's go back to the artboard. The artboard's a little bit large right now. Let's move it over. It's not associated, remember, with the artwork because we have this unchecked. And then I'm going to just kind of see what size artboard will work well. I think maybe so I'm thinking maybe a 17-inch wide by maybe an 8 inches tall. And notice that my little dot is here, so if I change the height to 8 inches, it's going to come off the top. But if I change the upper left corner, the same origin as my where I have my rulers, when I change that to 8, it'll already be close to what I want. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty close. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my figures. I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to use the Align tool, and I'm going to align them to the center of the artboard. Align to artboard is selected, not to selection. And then I'm going to align that vertically. And I'm also going to, well, I should have aligned my grid at the same time. So I think I'm going to group these grid lines as well, or height lines. So select one and all of them are selected, and then I'll select my figures as well, and then that way, align to artboard, and I can do a vertical and a horizontal alignment to get everything centered up and looking good. Well, one of the last things I'd like to do is to add some text. I want to just add some foot markers to to these height lines. So I'm going to go ahead and get my text tool, zoom in here, this is my 1 foot line. Grab that. I'm going to use the arrow keys to get it located at about the position I want it to be. Maybe about there. And now I'll just go ahead and copy that upward. And if I use the Shift key, it will hold the ortho on, and Option will make a duplicate. See if that's about right. See, these are a slightly different height. I should align the center of that with that line, so that looks good. All right, so now I'm just going to copy these upwards. Again, holding down the Shift and the Option key. And now I can just go in there and quickly edit this. 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, and 6 feet. Okay, I think that did it.